A common strain of the herpes virus is causing what's going around this week. Almost every child 3 and under will contract roseola at some point, and there's no treatment for this infection. Roseola is a mild infection that affects almost every child by the time he or she enters school, according to Dr. Lyle Stevenson at the Pediatric Center in Sulphur.
It makes you have a fever, and then in most kids, as soon as you stop running fever, you get a rash over most of your body, usually starting in the neck and trunk and then spreading to most of your body.
The rash is red and splotchy but not bumpy. Dr. Stevenson says it's very rare for older children or adults to have it.
It normally occurs in early childhood from about 3 or 4 months to almost 3 years is the latest we see it.
Human herpes virus 6 is to blame, and it's spread through contact with an infected person's respiratory secretions or saliva.
It's droplet more than anything else, so you prevent it just simply by your normal methods, hand washing, good hygiene, things like that.
Dr. Stevenson says most children recover fully from roseola within a week of the onset of fever. Over-the-counter medications can manage the fever, but that's about the only thing that will help.
This is something that's going to get better on its own. It requires no special creams to get rid of the rash, no antibiotics to get rid of the fever. Once the rash is there, it's on its way out, and you don't need any further treatment.
A child is contagious during the fever stage and 24 hours after. The good news, Dr. Stevenson says it's typically a one-and-done infection.
Once you have the virus, you're very unlikely to get it again unless you have some sort of immunodeficiency.
Roseola typically starts with a sudden high fever, often greater than 103. That can last for a few days until the rash appears. And one other thing I was talking to him about yesterday, you've got all these different strains of the herpes virus, and yes, when you say that word, it scares people, but the same one that causes cold sores, he was mentioning how a baby died this week after being kissed by someone when the baby was just about a week old, and that virus activated in the child.
And
and I was asking him, I said, do you see this? Because it scares so many parents, especially parents of newborns. And he said he treated one person in his residency who was affected by this. The baby ended up having extensive brain damage. So he said you can't raise your kid in a bubble, but just try to take precautions
for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, those first couple of weeks particularly, try to avoid kissing the baby.